My name is Layla, and at 28, I am living through the most surreal day of my life. Just moments ago, my own family demanded that I hand over the keys to my wedding gift, a car, to my brother, Ryan, justifying it with the shocking phrase, "He needs it more than you do." I froze in my snow-white dress, feeling their words slap me across the face, while my husband's new family, a family from Chicago, silently watched the humiliating scene. To understand the full absurdity of the situation, I must tell you what happened earlier. Just 2 hours ago, I was literally floating on air with happiness. My husband's father, David, approached me and placed the keys to a dazzling white Audi in my palm, saying he had always dreamed of a daughter like me. At that moment, his mother, Sarah, couldn't hold back her emotions and burst into tears of overwhelming joy. "You have to understand, I have never owned a car. I am the person who commuted to downtown Dallas for years, making 3 transfers in all kinds of weather to help my family, and this gift was like my most cherished dream come true." It's reasonable to ask how a family could ever reach such a point. Well, let me immerse you in the context. When I was just 18, our family's life changed dramatically. My father suffered a serious work-related injury. He was a manager at a large warehouse, and the accident led to severe consequences for his back, permanently robbing him of his ability to work. The insurance payouts we received barely covered the continuous medical expenses, let alone the payments on our house. My mother had never worked a day in her life and had no professional experience. The family needed someone to take on the financial burden. That role fell to me. I had to drop out of college right in the middle of the semester, putting a stop to my plans to get a degree in finance, and urgently find any source of income. While my peers were worrying about joining sororities and preparing for exams, I sat in the library late into the night watching tutorials, learning programming from scratch. As it turned out, I had a natural talent for technology. Less than 6 months later, I managed to get an entry-level position at a small software development company. My supervisor, Mr. Harrison, was genuinely impressed with how quickly I absorbed new information. "Layla, you're too capable to just be doing data entry," he told me after my very first performance review. "I'm moving you to the development department." This new position came with a hefty 30% raise. I remember thinking with relief that the ice had finally broken and our situation was improving. But it was at that very moment that my family made it crystal clear what my role was now. "Layla, you're so sensible with finances," my mother said, pushing a stack of bills toward me. "Since your career has started so successfully, it's only right that you take over managing the household budget." With that one conversation, I was appointed the primary breadwinner for a family of 4. Or rather, 3 adults and 1 guy who lived like a king. You see, while I denied myself everything, sacrificing my future and personal life, my brother Ryan was enjoying all the perks of student life. He went to fraternity parties, traveled to Florida with friends for spring break, joined various clubs, and was constantly dating someone. I paid for his dorm room, his meal plan, and all his textbooks. When he called home, he never asked how Dad's rehabilitation was going or how I was coping with the workload. The conversation always came down to one thing: "Layla, I need money for this," or "Layla, pay this bill." But the most hurtful part wasn't even the expenses. It was the absolute devaluation of my contribution. When Ryan's college friends came to visit, he would introduce me to them with an embarrassed smile, "And this is my sister, she does something with computers." It was never, "This is Layla, she's paying for my education," or "This is my sister, who is single-handedly supporting our entire family." No, I was just the sister with the boring office job. I kept telling myself that these were just temporary difficulties. I clung to the idea that as soon as Ryan graduated with his marketing degree, he would finally start contributing to the family. I imagined us becoming a real team. How we would support Mom and Dad together. Looking back now, it's almost painful to realize how naive I was. Because when Ryan graduated, he didn't see our parents as his responsibility. He decided they were exclusively mine. That same summer, he found his first real job, a marketing coordinator at a trendy agency downtown. He was offered a very decent starting salary. I was so proud of him and, to be completely honest, felt an immense sense of relief. Finally, I thought, I won't have to carry this burden alone anymore. The first warning sign I ignored was his very first paycheck. He spent the entire thing on a single designer suit. "I need to look presentable," he explained when I saw the bag from the boutique. In marketing, image is absolutely everything. His second paycheck went to a weekend trip to Las Vegas with his old fraternity buddies. The third went to a complete wardrobe overhaul. Meanwhile, I was still single-handedly covering the mortgage, utilities, groceries, co-pays for Dad's physical therapy, and Mom's medication costs. When I gently tried to hint to Ryan that perhaps it was time for him to start contributing to household expenses, he looked at me as if I had asked him to donate a kidney. "Layla, I'm just trying to get established," he argued, putting on an expensive watch that was clearly beyond his means. "I need to get on my feet first. Besides, you've got everything under control." That phrase, "you've got it under control," became my family's universal answer to any problem. My father said it when I suggested he look for work-from-home options he could manage. My mother said it when I admitted I was feeling burned out. And Ryan used it as a shield every time the conversation turned to his financial contribution. The problem is, when you become the support system for everyone, people very quickly stop noticing the weight you're carrying. What began as help in an emergency situation turned into a permanent obligation. The gratitude they once felt was replaced by a complete sense of entitlement. So, without even noticing it, I became the unofficial CFO of this house, responsible for ensuring everyone lived comfortably and pursued their ambitions, while my own dreams were put on the back burner indefinitely. The real breaking point came the first Christmas after Ryan got his job. He enthusiastically announced that he would be spending the entire holiday at a ski resort in Colorado with his college buddies. "It's pure networking, Layla," he insisted when he saw my face. "My friend's dad has huge business connections there." That same week, I was literally working myself to the bone, trying to cover the costs of modest gifts for our parents, and on top of that, a payment for Ryan's student loan, which he had conveniently overlooked. When I asked him if he planned to contribute anything at all to the holiday dinner, he laughed in my face. "Layla, you can see, I'm budgeted down to the cent right now. I'm saving up to move to a more prestigious neighborhood. Reputation is crucial in my business." Reputation. It was always about that. Never about substance, or my efforts, or the basic willingness to help when your family needs it. Only the facade. That evening, I sat in my tiny studio apartment, a cramped room I had been living in for the past 4 years because I couldn't afford anything better while all my spare funds went to supporting the others, and I did some math. In the 6 years since my father's injury, I had invested over $275,000 into my family's well-being. Ryan's contribution in all that time was exactly zero. But I stubbornly told myself it wasn't forever. He just needed more time to get on his feet. As soon as he got a promotion, as soon as he matured a little, he would surely realize his duty. I kept making excuses for people who had long since stopped bothering to make them for themselves. A year ago, at a major tech conference, I met Liam. He was one of the speakers, talking about the future of ethical AI, and I, in turn, was demonstrating a new data security protocol for my company. We ran into each other at the coffee machine, and he struck up a conversation about the platform I was showing. "This architecture could fundamentally change the approach to personal data protection for small businesses," he said, looking at my laptop with genuine interest. "Have you ever thought about licensing this technology?" Most men at these events usually tried to explain my own code to me. Liam was the first one who wanted to understand it. We talked nonstop for 3 hours, completely skipping the second half of the afternoon's presentations. He turned out to be incredibly insightful, witty, and, most importantly, he possessed a rare ability to listen, in a way that made me feel truly heard for the first time in years. Our first official date started at a regular cafe and ended with us sitting on a park bench, talking enthusiastically until dawn. Liam talked about his work. He consulted for socially oriented startups. I told him about my app development projects. But there was one thing I didn't tell him, at least not right away, that I had been single-handedly supporting my entire family financially for years. When I finally found the courage to tell him the whole truth about my situation, Liam's reaction amazed me. He didn't state the obvious, like they're using you or you're letting them do this. Instead, he just listened intently and asked one question, and what do you want in all of this? That question literally knocked the wind out of me. In all these years, no one had ever once asked what I wanted. I think I had even forgotten that I had the right to want anything. I want them to be okay, I said automatically. That's not what I asked, Layla, he corrected gently. I asked what you want. I want to finish my education. I want to travel somewhere that requires a passport. I want to wake up on a weekend and not immediately rush to check my bank balance. I want to buy groceries at the store without mentally calculating which bill I'll have to pay later. These desires, which I had suppressed for so long, flooded out of me as if a dam had broken. Liam listened to it all, without once judging or trying to immediately fix my problems or give me advice on what I should do. He was just there, listening. You know, he said when I finished, there's nothing selfish about wanting something for yourself. It just means being human. Meeting Liam's family was like traveling to a parallel universe. His parents, David and Sarah, ran a successful local business together. They asked me about my work with lively interest, about my goals, about my opinion on everything, from new technologies to what book I was currently reading. They remembered little details from our past conversations and, at subsequent family dinners, would ask how that project I had mentioned was progressing. None of them expected me to fuss around the table or wait on others. No one made dismissive jokes about my career or questioned my choices. Layla is incredibly capable, Liam told them at one of those dinners. She taught herself several programming languages on her own, which takes others years in university. People who are self-taught often think more outside the box, David supported him. A formal education is important, but you can't really teach someone determination and true curiosity. At that moment, I barely held back tears, sitting right there at their table. After so many years of being seen exclusively as the reliable workhorse in my family, I had finally met people who saw me as a person with potential, not just a source of resources. The difference became blindingly clear when Liam met my family. The first thing my mother said to him was, "I hope you realize that Layla is very devoted to us. That won't change, even if she starts a serious relationship with someone. No, nice to meet you, or we've heard so much about you." It was a direct statement that their claim on my life would always be the priority, regardless of the future I was trying to build for myself. Ryan was even more insufferable. He dominated the entire evening, bragging about his recent promotion and his new apartment in some prestigious neighborhood. When Liam tried to ask something about my career, Ryan immediately cut him off. "Oh, Layla has always been the techie one in the family. I'm more about the creative side." The techie one. That word again. It was their polite way of saying, she's useful, but boring. Liam understood perfectly. After that dinner, as we walked to his car, he didn't say a word for a long time. "They just don't see you," he finally said. "What do you mean?" "Your family. They don't see the real you, Layla. They only see the function you perform for them." Of course, he was spot on. But accepting that truth was almost as painful as committing betrayal. After all, they needed me so much. How could a good daughter just turn her back on her family when they were going through hard times? "Maybe you're right," I answered quietly, unable to admit it out loud. "Layla." Liam stopped on the sidewalk and looked me straight in the eyes. "You deserve to be surrounded by people who love you for who you are, not just for what you can give them." Standing there, in the glow of the streetlight, I felt something inside me shift definitively. For the first time in a very long time, I allowed myself to imagine a life where I was valued, not just used. Liam proposed just 6 months into our relationship, during a weekend trip to Lake Michigan. We were having dinner at a cozy restaurant with a panoramic view when he suddenly dropped to one knee and asked me to build a life with him. The ring was white gold, with a single, perfectly clear diamond. Classic, timeless, and incredibly elegant, it was a reflection of him. "I love the way you see the world," he said, his voice steady even though everyone in the restaurant had turned to look at us. "I admire your mind, your willpower, and your incredible capacity to care for others. But most of all, I love the person I become when I'm with you. Will you marry me?" Through happy tears, I whispered yes. People at the neighboring tables began to applaud. The waiter immediately brought us 2 glasses of champagne. And for a few, completely perfect hours, I was sure I was the luckiest woman in the entire world. Celebrating the news with my family the following week played out in a completely different scenario. When I held out my hand to show them the ring, my mother's first comment was, "Well, it's not very big, is it?" "It's not about the size, Mom," I replied, trying my hardest to keep my voice from trembling with hurt. "Of course, dear. I just thought a man with his means would choose something more noticeable." She squinted suspiciously, studying the stone. "Is it even real?" Ryan lazily leaned over to look. "Nice," he drawled, in the same tone one might use to praise a child's drawing. "Very traditional." Meanwhile, my father subjected Liam to a full-on interrogation about his financial situation. "This startup consulting of yours sounds very unstable," he declared, as if he himself hadn't been unemployed for many years. "What guarantees do we have that you can properly provide for Layla?" Liam endured this humiliating interview with incredible dignity, calmly answering every tactless question about his income, his business prospects, and his family's standing. But I could see the muscles in his jaw tighten and how forced his smile became by the end of the evening. But the worst part began when we carelessly started talking about wedding plans. My vision for the day was very simple: a small, intimate ceremony with our closest loved ones, followed by a beautiful dinner at a good restaurant. Nothing flashy, just what mattered to us. "What about Ryan?" my mother immediately interjected. "He'll be your man of honor, of course. He'll obviously need a new suit, shoes, and don't forget the bachelor party. Ryan has already told everyone he'll be organizing it." I hadn't actually asked Ryan to be my man of honor. I hadn't even thought about any party. But, as always, my wedding immediately turned into another opportunity for Ryan to feed his ego and be the center of attention. Actually, I began very cautiously. I wanted my best friend Ava to be my maid of honor. And Liam's best man will naturally be his best friend, Arthur. The atmosphere in the room instantly turned icy. "Ava? Some Arthur?" My mother's voice was metallic. "Some strangers instead of your own brother?" "Mom, they're not just strangers. Ava and Arthur are our closest friends. They've supported both of us through very tough times." "Well, I guess Layla has always valued outsiders more than her own family," Ryan chimed in, managing to sound like both a victim and a prosecutor. A powerful wave of guilt washed over me, making it hard to breathe. I was just trying to plan the happiest day of my life, but somehow I was once again being painted as the villain just for wanting to decide who would stand with me at the altar. "Ryan can be one of the groomsmen," I backpedaled, hating myself for giving in again, "but Ava is staying as my maid of honor." The conversation eventually shifted to trivial matters, but the damage was done. The evening that was supposed to be a celebration of our engagement had turned into another bitter reminder that any personal choice I made had to first pass their approval. Later, when Liam and I were back at my apartment, we discussed what had happened. "They're going to try to completely take over your wedding," he said bluntly, without any preamble. "They're just so worried about me, that's all," I tried to justify their behavior. He took my hands. "Layla, they spent the whole evening talking about what Ryan needs and what your parents expect. Did a single one of them ask what you want?" He was absolutely right again, but the wedding was still months away. I had time to set boundaries, time to finally make my voice heard. Looking back, I realize how naive that hope was. Because if my family excelled at one thing, it was the art of slowly breaking down my resistance until I gave in to their every demand. The following months of wedding planning became a masterclass in emotional manipulation. Every single decision, no matter how small, turned into a battle. Every boundary I desperately tried to build was immediately demolished by a barrage of tears, guilt-tripping, or direct accusations of selfishness. It started with the venue. My parents insisted on their country club, even though I had no connection to it and felt completely out of place there. "That's where all the respectable families celebrate weddings," my mother declared. "What will people think if you get married in some trendy loft downtown?" Then came the guest list. It somehow magically ballooned from 30 people to 100, and most of the new names on it were friends and old associates of my parents. People I had seen maybe twice in my life suddenly became mandatory guests. "Networking is important, Layla," my father explained when I asked why we were inviting a colleague he hadn't worked with in 15 years. "You never know whose connections might come in handy for Liam's business." But the most absurd battle erupted over the wedding cake. I wanted something simple and classic, a lemon cake with a light buttercream frosting. Elegant and delicious. Ryan, of course, had completely different ideas. "What about that new trendy thing? A 5-tier cake suspended from the ceiling," he suggested during our meeting with the baker. "Or maybe something with black icing and edible gold leaf? Something that will blow up on Instagram." "Ryan, I don't want the cake to blow up on Instagram," I replied firmly. "I want the guests to enjoy eating it." "Layla, it's your wedding," he said with an exaggerated sigh full of condescension. "Don't you want it to be unforgettable?" The implication was obvious: my tastes were too plain. My vision was too boring. I urgently needed Ryan's creative input to make my own wedding even remotely interesting. Liam was growing increasingly irritated with this family dynamic. "This is supposed to be our celebration," he told me after another exhausting phone argument about what flowers should be on the tables. "Why do I get the distinct feeling we're organizing a party for your parents?" "They just want what's best," I replied out of habit, though I was finding it harder and harder to believe it myself. "Layla, wanting what's best is asking what you like and helping you make it happen. What they're doing is called something else." The boiling point was reached during my final dress fitting. I had found exactly what I was looking for, a simple but incredibly elegant gown. No frills, just pure classic. Standing in front of the mirror, I felt beautiful, calm, and truly happy. Ryan had come with me, claiming he wanted to offer brotherly support. But as soon as the consultant stepped away to get accessories, Ryan began his critique. "Are you seriously settling on this?" he asked, looking me up and down. "It's kind of too simple." "I like that it's simple," I replied, studying my reflection. "I feel very comfortable in it." "But it's your wedding, Layla. You're supposed to make a statement." "What kind of statement?" "Well, I don't know. Something that screams you're successful, that you've achieved something. This dress says modest programmer, not bride." And there it was again. Modest. Simple. Reliable. The dubious epithet that had been my middle name my entire adult life. "Maybe I am a modest programmer," I said quietly. "Layla, come on. You're marrying a successful guy from the tech world. His family has influence, they have a reputation. This is your chance to finally show everyone that you belong in that world too. Show that I belong." As if I were some imposter, desperately trying to break into the big leagues. As if Liam's love alone wasn't enough to prove my right to be in the same world he was in. The consultant returned, and I stood silently while she made the final adjustments. But Ryan's words had already planted poisonous seeds of doubt. Maybe my dress really was too plain? Maybe I looked too simple for Liam's family? Was I embarrassing him without even realizing it? That evening, I called Liam in tears. "He just got into my head," I confessed, sobbing. "What if he's right? What if I'm not good enough for your family?" "Layla, stop." His voice was firm, but there was no anger in it. "My parents adore you. Exactly as you are. They've told me more than once how lucky I am to have met such a sincere and incredibly intelligent woman. But what if? No what ifs. Do you like your dress?" Yes. Do you feel beautiful in it? Yes. But. Then that's the only thing that matters. Your brother's opinion on this is completely irrelevant. He was right, I knew it, but the damage was done. The confidence I had felt in my choice was shaken. The joy that should have been overwhelming me was poisoned by self-doubt. Only now, looking back, do I understand that this was the whole point. Ryan simply couldn't stand the thought of me being genuinely happy and completely sure of myself. He needed me to doubt, so he could once again step in as the expert, the one with impeccable taste who knows how it's done. It was the same script, repeated for years, but only now was I beginning to see it clearly. The wedding day arrived, and it was absolutely perfect, a clear sky, ideal weather. Liam's parents, David and Sarah, had insisted I take the day before off to spend in quiet relaxation, so I felt calm and energized. My friend Ava arrived early in the morning and handled all the maid of honor duties flawlessly. It seemed like nothing could go wrong. But at exactly 1 o'clock, my mother called. Of course, she had an emergency. "Layla, we have a catastrophe," she blurted out without any greeting. "Your father's suit fits horribly. The pants are too short, and the jacket hangs off him like a sack. Have you tried finding an express tailor?" I asked, feeling a headache coming on. "No one can take it before Monday. Layla, he can't walk you down the aisle looking like that." I closed my eyes and forced myself to take a deep breath. "Mom, what do you want from me?" "I'm in the middle of getting my makeup done." "Ryan already found a solution," she said hurriedly. "He knows someone who can alter it right now, but he needs $300 in cash. None of us have that kind of money on us." Of course, they didn't. And, of course, the solution involved me getting money that was absolutely not budgeted for this day. "Maybe Liam's parents can help?" I asked hopefully. "Layla. We can't ask them for money. What will they think of us?" "They would think that my family is completely irresponsible with finances and used to solving problems at the last second," which was, in fact, the absolute truth. But instead of saying it out loud, I turned to Ava and asked her to drive to the nearest ATM to get the cash. "This is absurd," Ava said as we waited at the machine. "Your dad had months to make sure his suit fit properly." "I know," I sighed wearily. "But what choice do I have right now? You could let him face the consequences of his own lack of planning." But I couldn't bear the thought of my father looking disheveled at my own wedding. It wasn't about appearances, it was that I knew for a fact that if something went wrong, my family would find a way to make it all my fault. Ava drove the money to my parents while I finished my final preparations. When she returned, she had a very grim expression on her face. "Layla, your brother wasn't at any tailor." "What do you mean?" "I mean, Ryan was sitting in an expensive coffee shop 2 blocks away drinking a latte when I dropped off the money. And your parents knew exactly where he was." The betrayal hit me almost physically. They had lied about Ryan finding a solution. They had once again manipulated me into paying for their own negligence, all while making it seem like Ryan had saved the day again. "Are you sure?" "Positive. I saw him through the window as I drove by. He even waved at me." I sank heavily onto the chair in the bridal room, still in my robe, my makeup half finished. "They lied to me," I whispered. "Yes, they did. On my wedding day." "Yes." I stared at my reflection. In a few hours, I would become Layla Miller, starting a completely new chapter of my life with a man who truly valued and respected me. But first, I had to get through this ceremony, surrounded by people who seemed to see me as nothing more than a walking wallet. "Ava." "Yeah?" "After today, everything is going to be different." She smiled at me in the mirror. "Good." At that moment, I didn't know exactly what that meant, but I felt something inside me change irrevocably. The old Layla, the one who always took on other people's problems and silently sacrificed her own needs, was indeed getting married today. But she wasn't coming along into the new life. The ceremony itself went flawlessly. Liam looked like he couldn't believe his eyes as I walked down the aisle, and I felt that familiar wave of absolute certainty and love. Everything was right. He was the one I needed. We were where we were supposed to be. But the decisive moment came during the reception, when his parents approached me, and Liam's father, David, handed me the keys to that same white Audi. "Layla," David said in a firm but warm voice, "you have become the daughter we always dreamed of. We know what a burden you've carried for your family, and we really want you to finally have something that belongs only to you." His mom, Sarah, stood beside him, unable to hold back her tears, just crying from happiness. A car. My car. A personal car. After all these years of commuting with 3 transfers, hauling grocery bags home on foot, and constantly depending on the mercy of others for a ride, this was more than just a gift. It was independence. I burst into tears, hugging David and Sarah, completely overwhelmed by their generosity and warmth. For one brief moment, I felt absolute, unadulterated happiness and gratitude. And, of course, it was at that exact moment that my parents materialized next to me. "Layla," my mother said in her signature, sickly sweet voice, "we need to have a quick word." And in that instant, I knew, my fairy tale had just ended. My parents pulled me aside, over by the window near the exit, far from the ears of Liam's family and the other guests. My father looked nervous, while my mother put on her trademark reasonable expression. It was the same expression she always used when she was preparing to make another outrageous request. My mother started the conversation with a false smile, making sure none of the new relatives could hear us. "What an incredible gift from Liam's family," she whispered. "They must be very well off." "Yes, they're very kind," I replied, a chill running down my spine. I already suspected what was coming next. My father immediately chimed in, "You see, here's the situation. Ryan is starting his new job at that big agency downtown." I nodded, trying to remain calm. This was the prestigious position he had dreamed of, the one I had helped him prepare for the interview for. "He absolutely needs to make a solid impression," my mother continued. "You understand, taking the bus isn't an option for someone at his level. It's just unprofessional." At that moment, the full monstrosity of their plan became perfectly clear to me. "What are you suggesting?" My voice was quieter than I expected. "We just think it would be fair if the Audi went to Ryan," my mother said in the same cajoling tone she used on me as a child. "Think about it, you've managed perfectly fine without a car all these years, you're used to it. But for his career, it's essential for him to be taken seriously." My breath caught. They were standing here, at my wedding, asking me to re-gift my wedding present. To give the symbol of my new life to my brother, who hadn't lifted a finger to help the family in all these years. "Is this some kind of joke?" I whispered. "Layla, don't be a child," my father's tone instantly hardened. "Ryan has earned this start. He worked hard to get this position." Worked hard? His position and his entire carefree, debt-free life had been paid for by my hard work. By a decade of my life. And I had just, for the first time, received something that was meant only for me. "He deserves it more than you do," my mother added, her tone suggesting this was an irrefutable fact. Her words burned me like a slap. After all my efforts, after everything I had taken on, after all my sacrifices, my own mother was standing at my wedding declaring that my brother was more deserving of my wedding gift. "More than me," I repeated, unable to feel my own voice. "Well, of course. Ryan is just starting his career. You're already settled. You have Liam now, he'll take care of you." And there it was, the entire truth. Their fundamental belief that had defined their attitude toward me for years. My only function was to provide for them, right up until the moment I was passed on to someone else. My value was never in who I was, only in what I could give. I scanned the room, trying to hold on to reality. Liam was laughing with his college friends by the bar, completely unaware of the drama I was experiencing. Ryan was posing for photos with his buddies, a wine glass in hand. Ava was dancing with her boyfriend, finally relaxed after months of helping me organize this whole affair. Layla, Steele entered my mother's voice, we need an answer. Before I could make a sound, I felt a warm hand on my shoulder. Liam was standing next to me. I could tell from his face that he had heard enough to understand the gist of it. Excuse me, he said to my parents with icy politeness, but I need to borrow my wife for a minute. It's time for us to cut the cake. He gently but firmly led me away from them. I managed to catch the flash of rage on my mother's face. She wasn't finished with this conversation, and we both knew it. How much did you hear? I asked as we walked to the center of the room. Enough. His jaw was tight. They're demanding you give the car to Ryan. They think he deserves it more than I do. Liam stopped right there and turned me to face him. Layla, look me in the eyes. Do you want to give him that car? No, I answered, without a second's hesitation. I've never wanted anything to be just mine this badly in my entire life. In that case, you're not giving it to him. But they'll be furious. They'll say I'm selfish. Let them. Let them be angry. Let them say whatever they want. That car is yours. Standing there, in my wedding dress, surrounded by people who were supposed to be happy for me, I felt something inside me finally harden. It was a clarity I had never experienced before. Liam was absolutely right. This car was meant for me. It was my gift, and it was my decision. And, for what felt like the first time in my adult life, I was going to use the word no. The entire cake-cutting process was a blur. I smiled mechanically for the photographers while my mind raced through all the possible scenarios. What would their reaction be when I refused? What scene would Ryan make? How long would they punish me with their icy silence for daring to defy them? But underneath that familiar anxiety, something new was rising, a cold, righteous fury. The sheer audacity of the request, to demand my wedding gift, was staggering, even for them. But that casual, cruel phrase about Ryan being more deserving had cut me deeper than all their past actions combined. After the cake, Liam and I walked around the room, thanking the guests for sharing this day with us. At one point, as the dancing started, his parents gently pulled me aside. Layla, dear, Sarah said, I hope you understand how much this gift means to us. We've seen the burden you've carried, and we just wanted you to have something that would symbolize your new, independent life. It's absolutely perfect, I replied, and I meant it from the bottom of my heart. I just don't have the words to thank you. No need, David added. You're part of our family now, and in a family, you take care of each other without keeping score. The contrast with my own family, where every relationship was built on a you owe me principle, was deafening. David and Sarah did this because they loved me, not because they expected something in return. The party continued, and I soon noticed my parents and Ryan conferring intensely by the bar. They kept shooting glances my way, and I could almost physically feel them plotting a new tactic. They were clearly regrouping, preparing for round 2. That moment came when it was time for the bouquet toss. As soon as all the single women had gathered on the dance floor, my mother materialized behind me again. Layla, have you thought about what we discussed? Yes, I answered calmly. And my answer is no. The reasonable mask on my mother's face cracked. What do you mean, no? I mean no. I'm keeping the car. Layla, don't be ridiculous. We already promised Ryan he'd get it. He's already counting on that car to get to his new office. Then you shouldn't have promised him something that didn't belong to you. The music faded, and I turned to the guests to toss the bouquet. Ava caught it, she looked incredibly happy, laughed, and immediately shouted a few playful jokes toward her boyfriend, who was standing in the crowd. That happy, carefree moment felt completely surreal against the backdrop of the storm raging behind me. When I turned back, both my parents were staring at me with an expression I had never seen on their faces before. It was a mixture of shock, undisguised anger, and something that looked a lot like fear. We'll talk about this tomorrow, my father snapped, his voice icy. No, we won't. There's nothing left to discuss. I turned and walked away, not giving them a chance to reply, and joined Liam on the dance floor. But for the rest of the night, I could physically feel their eyes boring into my back. The illusion of a perfect celebration finally shattered as the guests began to leave. I knew this conversation wasn't over, and, sure enough, Ryan cornered me while Liam was distracted. All his festive charm had evaporated, leaving only raw irritation. "Are you seriously going to keep that car for yourself?" he asked, as if I were a child who wouldn't share a toy. I calmly told him it was my gift, and it was staying with me. "That's just selfish, Layla," he exploded. "You don't even need it. You live 2 steps from your office, and Liam already has a car." "But I desperately need it. I'm starting a new career, I have to maintain an image." I looked at him and felt years of exhaustion turn into cold anger. "Ryan," I said, "I've spent my entire life waking up at 6 a.m. to commute to work with transfers. I did that so you could study in peace and live your life. I think I've earned the right not to worry about your image." He waved my words away like a pesky fly. "That was a long time ago. This is about my future. I can't show up on my first day at this prestigious agency in my old heap. You just don't understand." No, I understood perfectly. I understood that in his universe, my needs would always come second. My work, my life, my feelings, they were all just the support staff for his grand ambitions. "Then, Ryan, you have a problem," I said. "And for the first time in your life, you're going to have to solve it yourself. Just like I always did." The shock on his face was genuine. It had clearly never occurred to him that he should be responsible for his own life. "What's gotten into you, Layla?" he muttered. "You were never like this." He was right. The old Layla, who would have sacrificed anything for the illusion of family peace, no longer existed. "Then you'd better get used to the new me," I replied and walked away. Our trip to a secluded cabin in the mountains was a complete reset for me. For the first time in years, my phone was silent. No calls about urgent problems, no disguised requests for money. For an entire week, I lived without flinching at every new notification. Liam and I spent our days outdoors and truly talked about us, about what we envisioned for our future life together. "You know," Liam said on our last night, as we sat by the fire, "it's only now that I've realized what constant stress you were living under. Right now, you're breathing differently." He was right. The quiet and distance had allowed me to realize what an incredible amount of my mental energy wasn't going into my own life, but into serving as a buffer for their endless problems. I felt an incredible sense of relief, as if I had shed a heavy, invisible weight. But the moment we returned home, the serenity of the mountains was replaced by a digital storm. My phone was blowing up with notifications. A barrage of missed calls from my mother and Ryan was accompanied by a hailstorm of texts. "You're being selfish, call me immediately. Ryan is in a terrible state. I hope you're happy. This isn't how we raised you." And finally, the cherry on top, "It's Liam turning you against your own family." That last message struck a nerve. The idea that I couldn't have my own opinion, but was merely succumbing to my husband's influence, told me everything I needed to know. Liam read the messages over my shoulder. "Looks like I'm officially the villain," he chuckled. "All because my wife grew a backbone." "Looks that way," I sighed. "Are you going to call them back?" he asked. The old Layla would have already been frantically dialing, ready to apologize just to stop the onslaught. But I looked at the phone and simply set it aside. Later. Not today. Instead, we focused on setting up our home. We unpacked our suitcases and wedding gifts, filling our shared space with life. Among the mail, I found a package from Liam's parents. Inside were the title and registration for the Audi. When I saw my name, Layla Miller, on the official document, I felt an incredible surge of pride. It was mine. Legally and morally. And no amount of manipulation could change that. The next morning, I drove to work in my own car for the first time. The commute, which usually turned into a 90-minute ordeal with transfers, took 15 minutes. I walked into the office rested, calm, and smiling. My friend Ava noticed immediately. Wow, marriage looks good on you. It's not just that, I laughed. It's that I got here like a human being, not a wrung-out dish rag. I'd forgotten what freedom of movement felt like. Have you talked to them? She asked quietly, knowing the whole backstory. Not yet. And honestly, I'm in no rush. Ava nodded in approval. Good. Let them cool off a bit. Maybe they'll realize they crossed a line. But unlike her, I already understood, my family was incapable of self-reflection. In their worldview, they were the injured party. And I was the traitor who had broken their cardinal rule. I had put my interests above theirs. The expected call came that evening. I didn't waste time on pleasantries, and neither did my mother. She skipped hello and went straight to the accusations. Do you have any idea what you've done to Ryan? Her voice was icy. He was almost late on his first day of work. He had to take the bus. Are you happy with your selfishness? I looked at Liam, who was eating dinner. He silently shook his head, letting me know this was my fight. Mom, Ryan is a grown man with a new job. He can figure out his own transportation. I didn't raise this kind of daughter, she exploded. You were always supposed to put family first. You're right, my voice was surprisingly calm. The daughter you raised would have already handed over the keys and apologized for daring to want something. But she's gone. By the way, when was the last time you asked how I was doing? The answer was a deafening silence. That's what I thought. I have to go, dinner's getting cold, I said, and hung up. There was silence for the next 3 weeks, and then Ryan himself showed up at my door, unannounced. He looked disheveled and angry, nothing like the polished careerist he wanted to be. He burst into the apartment and immediately saw the Audi keys on the table. So you weren't kidding. You really kept it. Yes, Ryan. It's my gift. Do you even understand how hard this is for me? He was literally seething. This public transport, it's humiliating. I show up to the office all sweaty, it's terrible for my image. He was, without a trace of irony, describing the exact life I had lived for 8 years while paying for his college education. Sounds terribly familiar, I said evenly. That was my reality for almost a decade while you were enjoying student life. And then he said the phrase that made everything crystal clear, that's completely different. You're used to that. I'm not. There it was. In his mind, it was perfectly normal for me to suffer because I was used to it, while his comfort was, by default, more valuable. You're right, I said, feeling everything inside me go cold. I am used to it. Used to sacrificing myself. Used to my needs not mattering. But I don't want to be anymore. His face twisted in rage, not remorse. Fine. Keep your damn car. But don't expect me to ever forgive you for this. Forgive me for what, Ryan? I asked, looking him straight in the eye. For no longer being your 24/7 ATM and support service? I don't care. To be honest, I don't think we ever had a relationship. Did you ever call me just to ask how I was, and not because you needed something? He just stared at me, unable to say a word. I asked you when, I pressed. Name one time in our entire adult lives when you treated me like a sister, and not like your personal trust fund. That's not true, he finally forced out. Really? When was the last time you helped mom and dad with money? Even once? I'm just starting my career, he sputtered. A career you were starting while I was fully supporting you, I cut him off. That's the whole difference, Ryan. I gave, and you took. That's not a family, that's just being used. He desperately tried to find a way to make me the guilty one again. It's Liam. He's the one who turned you against us. He finally spat out. No. Liam didn't turn me. He just showed me what it feels like to be valued for who you are, not for what can be taken from you. Ryan grabbed his jacket, resorting to his last, most disgusting argument. You know, Dad's thinking about going back to work, just to help me with a car. His back won't be able to take it, but I guess your selfishness is more important to you than his health. The manipulation was so pathetic and transparent that I didn't even get angry. He was seriously trying to make me responsible for his unwillingness to live within his means. Ryan, I said, opening the door for him. You have a prestigious job. Get a loan and buy yourself a car. I don't have a credit history, he yelled desperately. I just looked at him. Of course, he didn't. I had always paid for everything. Well, I said. Then it's time you started building one. I closed the door, leaving him alone in the hallway. After that, a silence descended, lasting for 3 months. It was broken when my father called to invite us to my mother's birthday. I initially wanted to decline. But after talking with Liam, we decided we should go. Regardless of everything, I missed my father, and I wanted to believe that passions had cooled down. The birthday dinner for my mom was surprisingly calm at first. My father seemed genuinely happy to see Liam and me, and we were even able to have a normal conversation about his health and my work. For a brief moment, I thought we might be able to leave the car scandal in the past. But then Ryan arrived, and the whole atmosphere in the room soured. He wasn't alone, he was with his new girlfriend, Jessica. She was the type who radiated quiet, confident affluence, expensive bag, flawless appearance. Jessica, this is my sister, Layla, Ryan said with a strange intonation. The one I told you about. Jessica smiled politely, but I understood, she had already been fed his version of events, where he was the victim. For the rest of the evening, Ryan didn't miss a single opportunity to make passive-aggressive remarks about his hard life. He complained about how exhausting public transport was, how awkward it was to arrive at important meetings looking unpresentable, and how hard it is when your closest relatives turn out to be unreliable. I saw Liam tense up, but to my surprise, I remained completely calm. His words didn't get to me anymore. The climax came when dessert was served. Ryan has some wonderful news, my mother announced happily. Ryan beamed, transforming back into the golden boy. Jessica and I are moving in together. And she's going to help me get a new car, so I won't have to depend on unreliable people anymore. The dig was clearly aimed at me, but I no longer cared. All I saw was a familiar pattern. Ryan hadn't changed. He had just found a new source of funding to solve his problems. That's wonderful, Ryan, I smiled genuinely. I'm glad everything worked out for you. He looked at me defiantly. Yeah, well. It's a good thing someone in this world is willing to be supportive. Ryan, don't, my father interjected. But my brother, looking straight at me, continued venomously, I'm just saying, some people are lucky enough to find outside support. Unlike others. Liam put his fork down on his plate. Ryan, that's enough. What, am I wrong? My brother snapped. Is that your new role, huh? Turning her against her own family? My role is to love my wife, Liam replied evenly. Not to use her as a personal ATM, like all of you are used to doing. A dead silence fell over the room. What did you say? My mother's voice became dangerously quiet. And that's when Liam let loose. I said what Layla has been too afraid to say for years. Who paid for Ryan's college while he partied with his friends? Layla. Who paid all the bills in this house while you two relaxed? Layla. She gave up her life so you could have yours. And in return, you demanded her wedding gift. Get out. My father jumped up from the table, his face crimson. Get out of my house. How dare you? With pleasure, Liam answered and headed for the door. I sat for a second, looking at their faces, distorted with rage. They weren't angry because he had lied. They were angry because he had dared to speak the truth. You're right, I said, standing up. It's time for us to go. Layla, wait, my father yelled at my back. Don't let him. He's destroying our family. I looked directly at my father, the man who was supposed to love me most, but who had silently watched as I was used. Dad, it's not Liam. It's you. You destroyed everything yourselves. And in that moment, I finally said what I should have said 10 years ago. I'm done. I'm closing this bank. I am no longer your personal trust fund or your emergency service. I am tired of sacrificing my happiness for people who don't even notice me unless they need something. Layla, you can't talk like that, my mother cried out desperately. I not only can, I am. The financial support is over. Today. My 24/7 availability is over, too. And I will not let you manipulate me anymore. I took Liam's hand and walked to the door. If you ever want to have a relationship with me as a daughter, and not as a resource, I said, turning back at the door, you know where to find me. But if you just need money, don't bother. We left, leaving them in complete silence, forced for the first time in years to face the consequences of their own actions. We drove the whole way home in silence. Liam just held my hand. How are you? He asked when we parked. Free, I exhaled. And it was the honest truth. 2 years have passed. After that dinner, my family was silent for 6 months, the longest period of quiet in my entire life. It was an incredible time. For the first time, I learned what it felt like to live without bracing for the next crisis or a call with a request. I went back to college for evening classes and finally got my degree. Liam was my biggest supporter. When I graduated with honors, his parents threw a party for me. Mine didn't even send a text. At work, I was promoted to lead developer, and my salary finally reflected my true worth. I had my own money, which I could spend on us, not on covering someone else's debts. Liam and I bought our first house, a cozy place with a small garden and a 2-car garage, which we decorated exactly as we liked. And then, as expected, my family tried to come back. First was Ryan, who messaged my friend Ava, trying to dig up details about my new, rich life. It turned out Ryan's new life was short-lived. Just 4 months later, Jessica dumped him, having apparently realized he was just using her financially. She left him high and dry with unbearable bills and payments for a car he couldn't afford. My friend Ava was the first to scout the situation. Ryan had apparently written to her, trying to find out if I had softened up. He even mentioned that family should know how to forgive. Funny how he suddenly remembered forgiveness, I snorted when Ava told me. When that maneuver didn't work, my mother called a month later. Her tone was pointedly conciliatory. Layla, maybe you could come over for dinner? Just us. I decided to save us all some time. Mom, is this an invitation because you miss me, or because Ryan needs money? A long, telling pause followed. A bit of both. Thanks for being honest, I said. But the answer is no. Layla, he's desperate, her voice broke. He might have to move back home. That sounds like a problem he created for himself. He's your son, but he's not my child to rescue. What will it take for you to forgive him? She switched to negotiations. I was ready for this. For starters, I don't need your requests, I need his apology. A real one. And an admission of how he, and all of you, treated me. And then you'll help him? She asked hopefully. No. That's what it will take for me to consider speaking to him again. Money is off the table. It's time he learned what I had to learn at 18, responsibility. It was a dead end. She wanted the old, convenient ATM back. But that ATM was closed for good. And then, 6 months later, when I was no longer expecting anyone, my father called. Layla, his voice was unusually quiet. I need to apologize to you. I was so stunned, I just stayed silent. I've been thinking all this time about what you said at Mom's birthday about how we used you. And you were right. You were right about all of it. I collapsed onto the sofa, shocked to my core. Dad? I'm listening, I finally whispered. Your mother and we got so used to you being the solution to all our problems that we completely forgot you were our daughter, not our life raft. We stopped seeing you, we only saw your help. Tears streamed down my face, but I didn't try to stop them. And Ryan, we ruined him, Layla. We let him believe he could get away with anything because you were always there to fix his mistakes. What you did, standing up to us. That was so brave. I'm proud of you, and I'm so sorry I didn't say that 2 years ago. We talked for hours that night. Really talked. For the first time in my adult life. He told me how useless he felt after the injury and how ashamed he was that he had let me take on that entire burden. He admitted that watching Ryan drown in debt, he finally understood that they had failed both of their children. My mom called a week later. Her apology wasn't as eloquent, but it felt sincere. She confessed that she had always been a little envious of my intelligence and my strength, and that by burying me in responsibility, she was subconsciously trying to hold on to me, to make herself dependent on me. With Ryan, it was harder. It took much longer before I heard a short, forced sorry from him. But it was a start. Today, 2 years later, my relationship with my family exists, but it's completely different. It's more reserved, filled with boundaries, but at least it's based on honesty, not obligation. My father and I talk on the phone. He found a small consulting gig. My mom sends me recipes. Ryan and I exchange polite holiday greetings. We'll never be truly close, but we're no longer at war. That same Audi is still in my garage. It's my daily driver. Every time I get behind the wheel, I remember that day at my wedding. Now, Liam and I are expecting our first child. And I know one thing for sure, this baby will grow up understanding that their value is in who they are, not in what they can do for others. They will know the difference between helping and self-sacrifice. That wedding gift wasn't just a car. It was a symbol that I could be valued, just because. When my family tried to take it away, they were trying to take away my right to self-respect. I am infinitely grateful they didn't succeed.